let's go. Hi, everybody. I'm here with Ben Phillips, and we're going to be talking about recruiter enablement. Ben, thanks for joining me today. Give us a quick introduction.
Pleasure. Yeah, hi. Thanks, Adam. So Ben Phillips, soon to be starting a new role with a company called The Happening. Background, in a nutshell, is marketing communication, coaching, leadership development, and culture in large businesses, in-house, agency side, SaaS. So I like to think quite rounded, and I can bring together several perspectives to the work that I do in employer branding and talent marketing currently.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, and Ben's become semi-famous on LinkedIn recently with a series of really great posts about how to do things better, and that's how Ben came to my attention. So, Ben, tell us about recruiter enablement. What is that to you?
So from the perspective of someone who looks after talent marketing and employer branding, recruiter enablement is how do you get recruiters on the front line to be able to consistently engage with their talent in line with the brand and the culture and the values that that brand is trying to portray. In a nutshell, that's it. How do you get them to do it consistently, whether they are having a one-to-one conversation on a telephone or a face-to-face event in person, or if it's a one-to-many broadcast to maybe they're engaging with in a CV database or another CRM. But how can you tell them how to speak in the right tone and turn up in the right look and feel whenever they're communicating, engaging in line with what the brand and the marketing should be for that organization?
Yeah, it's a really, really important point. I've often said, I've said it on this channel a few times, I think recruiters are nearly always great talkers. They're not always great writers, however. Would that be your experience?
It always depends on the individual. Some people are better at writing than they are face to face. Sometimes it's vice versa. I think what's important is consistency, and that's where the enablement that we do, or my teams have done, or I've had exposure to, or and that's where my L&D background, my leadership development background, has been very fortunate for me in terms of understanding how do you enable people to develop and grow and change behaviors.
Yeah.
So either way, whichever one it is, whichever one you're good at, there's always room for improvement. And you might be great at talking, but are you great at talking in the right tone, saying the right things that we want to get across consistently about the brand? And I think that word consistency is quite key around the goal of enablement. Because as a brander, consistency is crucial, because consistency of messaging and look and feel drives familiarity. Familiarity then builds trust. And this is branding 101, right? Whether you're consumer or candidate marketing. So you need people saying the same things in similar ways, applying their own personality, obviously, but the golden thread needs to be the branding consistency. So whether a candidate or candidates they're talking to are in transaction mode, i.e. I'm looking for a job right now, or they're not in transaction mode, I'm happy where I am, but I could be tempted in future, you just need to keep on drip feeding me content so my subconscious mind is mentally primed to think positively of you when I am looking for a job. So when I am looking for a job, I don't have to do as many mental somersaults to consider you. And that's where the consistent communication comes in, whether it's whatever touch point that is. I might see a social post and just subconsciously register it, and then might be in an event and see one of your representatives or your recruiters and be speaking to them. That's another notch on the bedpost, so to speak. Yeah. Or I get an email, that's another notch. It just has to be consistent. All these recruiters. Sorry, you were going to say.
I was going to say one really important thing that you mentioned there is my point about recruiters are often great talkers, but not so great writers. And you're absolutely correct that it can sometimes be the opposite way around. And of course, you've just made me think about the concept of like crib sheets and briefing documents, and I'm thinking about hiring managers as well, because this isn't just about recruiters. Recruiters can often be great talkers, and they've often come from recruitment agency backgrounds, and therefore they've got sales, skills and some sales training. Hiring managers very rarely do, unless they're in the sales organization. And so as a result, like, what is it they say? If left to their own devices, head of engineering goes and talks to candidates, head of procurement goes and talks to candidates, they could be saying entirely different things about what it's like to work at that organization and what the vibe is, and what the purpose and mission is, and all that kind of thing. So they do need some kind of briefing, I think. Have you done anything in this area?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've talked about, you asked me kind of what is recruitment enablement to me? And we've talked about it at a conceptual kind of lofty / strategic level.
Yeah.
At a really practical level, and I'm conscious that my L&D experience may be slightly out of date, but getting really pragmatic. So it's an old model. I still subscribe to it, but I appreciate it might be outdated. In L&D terms, we used to talk about the 70-20-10 learning model. And for those that might not know, that's just that 10% of learning happens in the classroom, 20% of learning is through serendipity and on the job and with your day-to-day interactions with your manager and your peers and your stakeholders, and 70% of learning happens in the job. So for me, enablement needs to be a blended learning solution. And when I talk about blended learning, I'm talking about there'll be a classroom activity maybe to kick something off. But if you look at the data that talks about classroom learning, within 72 hours, I think, of people walking out of a classroom, physical or virtual, I think they lose something like north of 90% of what they've learned. So they need to apply it, the old cliche, use it or lose it.
Yeah.
So what we've done when I was in my former company, IBM, for example, sell messaging for entry-level talent. How do you go and speak to them? So we created some materials. We've got videos, we've got talk tracks and crib sheets, as you refer to, sound bites. This is what you say. Here are the objections. We store them on the internet for easy accessibility and discoverability so people can find them just in time. But we kick things off with a classroom session. In that classroom session, some enablement happens. But what we did, because it's not just about enablement has to lead to adoption.
Yeah.
Because you can enable me, it doesn't mean I'm going to use it.
Yeah.
And then adoption needs to lead to embedding.
Yeah.
You can train me, enable me, I might use it, but I'm not going to use it all the time.
Yeah.
So how do you do those three things? So for us, it was classroom session kickoff, talking about the resources that are available. We made sure managers were in that classroom session, and then we got people to commit to something they can apply to their day job. So before you leave this classroom, go to your yearly objectives. We don't want you to add a new objective. We want you to take one of your existing ones, say, for example, to hire 5% more females in tech this year, whatever it was, relative to your market that you operate in. And then we would say to the people, or the delegates of the training experience, add something such as achieve that by incorporating the materials we are going through in the entry-level sell messaging training. And then you've got the managers there, so you have to commit to it, because some people will do it, a lot don't unless they're measured by it. So for me, that's kind of the well-rounded what enablement can entail. It's not just one thing, it's multiple things, repeatedly delivered in a consistent tone, so people can understand it, use it consistently, so the behaviors are then embedded in everything they do on a day-to-day basis.
Wow. Okay, there we go. That's a blueprint for how to do it. And some of the other things that we need to be thinking about, because you're certainly right. It's not just about enablement, it's about adoption and embedding. So, Ben, thank you very much for taking the time to join me today.
Pleasure.
I enjoyed talking to you about this, and looking forward to seeing you soon. Best of luck with starting your new job. It's just like,
thank you very much.
A few days away.
Yeah, exciting times. Thank you. Appreciate that, Adam.